Okay, hello, I'm Chris Hecker, and this is my Soapbox. No one knows about your game. So, how many people here have heard of Spy Party? It's a pretty well-known and highly anticipated indie game, right? It's been on like topping most anticipated lists and pretty well looked forward to by lots of different people for many years now. I've been mocked about how long that's been happening, in fact. So everybody knows about Spy Party, right?
One of the most interesting games on the horizon for me, it's called Spy Party. It's a game by Chris Hecker. I don't know if you've seen it before.
So there's Peter Molyneux, someone who's a big fan of experimental and wacky games, in the game industry, immersed in the environment that I'm making this game, and he's never heard of it, even with all this press. He's not alone. Fans post on Reddit constantly, every couple months, about what is this game? I heard about a cool game. Every time there's a big press bump, then a little while later, someone's like, oh, what was that game I heard about? Sometimes they can find the answer to their question by just typing what they typed into Reddit into Google, and it comes right up. But still, they're confused. They think they heard about something, they're not sure, and they get help. Also, anecdotally, like almost no mainstream devs, I talk to a lot of them that I meet for the first time, have heard about it. Hi, I'm Chris. What do you work on? I work on Spy Party. What's that? Same with journalists. It's surprising how often people, I meet journalists who have never heard of the game, and I describe the game, they're excited about it, it's great, they want to know more, but they have never heard about it even with as much press as Spy Party has gotten. And even indies, at IndieCade last year, which is in October, I had just announced the new artwork, and it had gotten a lot of press, as you can see. Like, it was basically on every big game blog and forum. But a ton of indies had never heard that I had announced the new art style. In fact, I met Dino and Arn from Playdead on the walk over, and they had not heard about it. And then he related a story where he meets people who have never even heard of Limbo, which is obviously a huge hit, sold millions of copies. So I want to be clear, I'm not complaining about this. I think that I'm incredibly lucky with how much attention Spy Party has gotten. I work really hard to try and make a game worthy of that attention. So this is not a complaint, this is more an observation that this actually happens when you start paying attention. And so it's important to look into what's going on here. I gave a talk in 2011 at the IGS in this exact same Soapbox time slot where basically I analyzed AAA indie games where Bastion, Braid, World of Goo, those kinds of games, Limbo, and almost all of them have what I called a long-term, slow-burn grassroots awareness building campaign, talking about the game very early and often. Natural Selection 2 is another example that Charlie talked about earlier today. The problem is there are a lot of games, even if you're doing this long-term awareness building, there are just a lot of games. You blink and you miss it. There's just an endless faucet, fire hose really, of game news coming out. So it's actually understandable why players don't hear about something, even with as much press relative to other indie games as Spy Party. There's a thing in advertising called effective frequency, and there's a lot of snake oil salesmen in advertising, but they make these theories about how many times someone needs to be exposed to something before they'll engage with it or buy it or even remember that it exists. There are estimates of anywhere from 3 to 20 times that people need to be exposed to something. It's not just games. Gabe had to wrote a blog post the other day on Penny Arcade apologizing for talking about script search so much, but he had done some surveys and almost no one knew about it. He was surprised, even with their 3 million readers and talking about it on the front page and it being on the sidebar all the time, no one had heard about it or the Penny Arcade report or any of these other things they do besides the comic. So he said, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to keep talking about it because we really love this stuff and we want people to know about it. So, if you're doing this, what about overhyping? Should you be afraid of overhyping your game? Is Phil here in the audience? Phil did an AMA the other day on Reddit where someone asked him what's a big mistake that you see indie devs doing that you'd like them to stop doing, and he said it's the same mistake he made, which was announcing too early. It's hard to sustain the hype. It's harder to work in secret, but he thinks it's worth it for the surprise in the end. And I think I can understand the feeling behind this, but I think it's incredibly risky. You spend years slaving away on pouring a lot of love into your game and putting all your PR eggs into one basket and this big surprise at the end. Given the way news spreads on the internet and the fact that no one will have heard about it, it's easy for someone to blink and miss it. And then all of your work just goes unnoticed by those people. It's just incredibly risky to do. So I advise against it. I have some personal experience with this overhyping concept, or this idea that it's possible, and which is I worked on Spore for 6 years, and after thinking about it a lot and looking at, reading the forums and looking at how it worked, I actually came up with a theory, which is that I don't think you can overhype a game. You can only underdeliver. If Spore had been as awesome as we were saying it was going to be, it would not have been a problem. Everyone would have forgotten that we had talked about it for 5 years. The only problem was that the game was not very good. This assumes that the game you're working on is going to be awesome. If the game is not going to be awesome, then you have other problems besides your PR strategy, and you should be working on that. But if you're pretty confident about your game, then I think PR strategy becomes really important. So yeah, I don't think you can overhype games. I think you can only underdeliver. Now, it's very important to point out that different games need different approaches. A spoilerable game like The Witness or the Stanley Parable, you need to be careful. You need a subtle hand on how you're going to do this awareness building. But it's still possible. John's been talking about The Witness for a really long time. The core part of the game is not spoiled, but he's really run a really open development process all the same, and build awareness. So it's important not to be sad that no one learns about your game. I actually used to be that way. I used to say, like, I spend so much time on awareness building, and I meet someone who doesn't know about it, and it's just like, oh, it's all a failure. And instead, that's not true. Instead, it's thinking about it as an opportunity. Like, here's another person who wants to know about your game, who's interested, and they'll talk to their friends. And so you need to see it as an opportunity. In fact, Jamie Cheng has this theory that it's better to think about it as there's an infinite number of potential players for indie games, because the number of people who are interested in these kinds of games is so large nowadays that you might as well treat it practically as practically infinite. And it's a better way. You're not using up people when you start talking about them early or something like that. There's just more and more and more of them. And I think this is a great way of thinking about it. And so the key thing is to remember it's a marathon, not a sprint. The sprint aspect is things like, you want to have a big PR push at the end. There's no question, but it's just a tool in the overall strategy of talking about your game early and often, because right now no one knows about it. Thank you very much.